From Fox 8 Sports, this is the Overtime Podcast.
From the Fox 8 Studios in New Orleans, the Fox 8 Overtime Podcast. I'm Vasilios. That is Sean Fazende. Remember to like, subscribe, rate, and review. You guys can find us wherever you listen to or watch your podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, you hit the little bell button right there. You get notified every time we upload a new podcast. Sean Fazende, happy Wednesday to you. It is Wednesday, December 27th, as it stands right now.
Yeah.
We took a little holiday break. How you been?
We're back. Doing all right. Good Christmas weekend. So we did the whole holiday thing. Had a good time with the family. Enjoyed myself. Good to be back here with another week of NFL action, but it felt like it's been a year since that Saints-Rams game because a lot happened and changed the Saints' fate, obviously, over the Christmas weekend. The help they were hoping to get did not arrive. No Christmas gifts for them. That's why you take care of business when you can, while you have the opportunity to. Now you're on the outside looking in. I was going to go in that direction today with this podcast, but then a big shoe dropped, a big bomb dropped out in Denver. And that's where we're going to start with the big picture today. So,
all right. So, as we start every podcast, big picture. But this time we are looking at the NFL as a whole. Russell Wilson of the Denver Broncos got benched today.
Yeah.
Like, what do you make of that? Because I saw there's a couple different factors that went into it.
Yeah, absolutely. First off, I'm not just going to go do a national story just for the sake of doing a national story. I wanted to do this and kind of tie it into the local, give it a local hook. And there's a couple different local angles. But I want to tie it in specifically with Russell Wilson signing the trade and how it specifically kind of ties in to the Saints' approach with Derek Carr. But first and foremost, look, I'm gonna do this right here. This is me pat myself on the back. Your boy called it. Your boy called it in the summertime. Your boy called it when we ranked our top 32 quarterbacks. I said that this marriage is not gonna work. Look, man, I covered former Saints head coach. I'll say it, Sean Payton for the last 15 years. So. I know the way a guy thinks.
Sure.
When it comes to football, I know the way the guy thinks. Even though we never had like that, talk every day, text every day. He never called me to complain about anything with the coverage or anything like that. I never had that kind of relationship with him, but I always felt like I understood his football mind. And I knew Russell Wilson's game is extend plays and extend the play and extend the play, and there's randomness to his game. And Sean Payton's a precision guy. Sean Payton is a precision guy. So the fact that didn't last is of no surprise to me, because sometimes when you have a play extender, there's that sweet spot. You extend the play when the initial play breaks down. You don't purposely break the original play down by extending the play, if that makes any sense. You don't bypass the correct play to extend the play and maybe get a bigger play or maybe get a big mistake. Look, you could tell the way that season was going, despite some wins. That, to me, was an arranged marriage that was not going to work. That was never his guy. Ever his guy. And to be honest with you, I'm thoroughly intrigued with what SP is going to do next, because he's terrified of a rookie quarterback. He's never going to be happy with a quarterback because it's just like the widow trying to find love again after you had the perfect soulmate for all these years, and you can try some new things out, but the fact of the matter is he had his perfect quarterback. Yep. He was here for 15 years. His name was Drew Brees. No one's going to operate that system like Drew. He's never going to have the perfect quarterback for that system because he had it. Never going to find it again, at least the way Drew did it. So I am thoroughly intrigued to see who ends up being the next guy. Because look, there's already this talk of they asked him to Russell Wilson to adjust his salary guarantee next year to basically force a competition next year, because that was in October, according to a Jordan Schultz report. October. So, that's how quickly Peyton knew. So, I am thoroughly intrigued with where he goes next, because he's, like I said, he's terrified of a rookie quarterback. And who else are you going to find? And I'm sure he'll try to talk up somebody that's not really that good, talk it up to kind of, give it the feel that I know Jared Stidham's going to be the guy for the next game or two or whatever it is. And we'll see how that works out. But I'm thoroughly intrigued with how he goes with that because he has a history of talking up offseason quarterbacks, and it never pans out.
Right.
We know all about it. So, but how does this tie into really the main point I was trying to make? Well, because if you go back to 2022 and the 2023 off seasons, there are 4 big name quarterbacks left their franchise to another franchise. So they went from one to the other. 4 of them: Russell Wilson, Deshaun Watson, who was the Saints' first choice back in 2022, Aaron Rodgers, and Derek Carr. To be fair, none of those guys have elevated the new franchise. They all thought they were going to come by, elevate the new franchise, like Peyton Manning, like Tom Brady.
I'll give Rodgers a little bit of a little bit of cushion.
It's still
there.
Exactly. Well, yeah. Let's be fair there.
Yeah.
He obviously didn't only play 2 snaps, but none of the other 3, none of those guys have come in and been the franchise savior, the missing piece. What Peyton Manning did in Denver, what Tom Brady did in Tampa Bay. Heck, what Brett Favre did in Minnesota. I know he initially went to New York, but when Brett Favre did in Minnesota. So none of those guys have elevated the franchise. But if you really look at it, could you imagine right now the Broncos, what they gave up and what they paid for Russell Wilson to give up on it pretty quickly? They gave up Drew Lock, Noah Fant, Shelby Harrison, and it was a first, second, fifth, and a 2023 first and second. Charles Cross, Boye Mafe, Derek Hall. Is that right? Derek Hall, Tyreek Smith, Devin Witherspoon, and a whole lot of dead money for a guy that's probably not going to be on their roster next year. Deshaun Watson, honestly, he's been more either injured or suspended, and they gave up what's the fully guaranteed contract. The first-round pick, Kenyon Green. Is that right? Kenyon Green, Will Anderson, Tank Dell ended up being part of those draft picks, and they still got a first-round pick in 2024. It looks like a fifth-round pick in 2024. Aaron Rodgers, it was a first-round swap, a second-round pick, a seventh-round pick, and a 2024 second-round pick. So, and I know this is not a big consolation prize to some of y'all listening because I know how some of y'all feel about Saints quarterback Derek Carr. But if you look at what the Saints paid for Derek Carr and what he's giving him, at least he's kind of returned a little bit, or at least he's given him a little bit.
It's a bargain compared to the others.
Compared to the other ones, it wasn't the biggest mistake of the rest of those guys, what they have been. But what's really the sort of the situation? It's the last chapter of these guys in their careers. It's a mixed bag if it works. Like you got Peyton Manning, you got Tom Brady, but for every one of those, you got Russell Wilson, which isn't going to work. Deshaun Watson, maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, but they are that fully guaranteed contract, gave up all those assets, and he's IR this year and was suspended for 11 games last year. And then we'll see what happens with Aaron Rodgers, but he's going to be like 41 years old next year. So how much longer does that have? And then we'll see with Derek Carr. So I wanted to bring that up because of how it tied into like these big quarterback names switching teams and how the Saints aren't the only ones who took a big swing and have it, and you can make.
Would you call it a foul tip?
Maybe. In the Saints' case, Carr's been available all star. He hadn't missed a start, but it's like he hasn't elevated the franchise the way they had hoped, but it was better than the other 4 or the other 3, at least over the last couple of years. We talk about Rodgers, Watson, and Russell Wilson. So I wanted to bring that, and also this. When is it time to give up on an investment? Russell Wilson's 30 games. Because I know that's what a lot of people are thinking with the Saints. Okay, this was a bad deal. Let's change. Let's move on with Derek Carr. When is the proper time to give up on an investment? Well, in Russell Wilson's case, it was 30 games, but that's over 2 head coaches. Sean Payton was done with him pretty quick, and clearly when they hired Sean Payton, he was going to win that deal. So I'm very curious to see when or if and when the Saints decide it's time to pull the plug on their investment with Derek Carr when that ends up being, because it was 30 games with Russell Wilson. They went 11-19. His stats weren't that bad this year. It was 26 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. But I guess the point is, I don't think Cleveland's going to give up on that investment anytime soon, because they can't. They're financially tied to it. And the Jets, as we just mentioned, aren't going to do it as well. So I guess the point is, it's not always easy as just saying, you know what, let's just jump out. I mean, even the Broncos had to work through 30 games and was 11-19 record before they decided to say, you know what, this isn't going to work. It was a bad deal. Horrible trade for them. Maybe one of the worst trades.
Seahawks made out like bandits.
Maybe one of the worst trades in NFL history. And the Deshaun Watson trade could end up being pretty close to that if he is constantly injured or not productive or whatever the case may be. We'll see. He's still young. He's under 30. So at least in the Saints case, you didn't give up any assets.
Right.
And you paid the 13th highest paid contract for probably, I did a little bit of math last week. If I were ranking the quarterbacks right now, I'd probably have Carr like 18th or 19th right now in the NFL. So little high for what he's giving you, but it's not Russell Wilson high or Deshaun Watson high. So it was an interesting development around the NFL. I mean, what do you think? Because honestly, there's a lot of layers to make it a big deal like that, and then for them to check out so quickly. It really, I mean, that's just basically saying, yeah, we screwed up. He ain't the player we once thought he was, and we got to now go back to the drawing board to search for a new quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, you when Russ went to Denver, when he was dealt, you kind of thought, hey, here's the guy we've been missing since Peyton Manning retired. And so seeing it unfold the way that it did, I mean, it's not surprising, but I mean, I guess part of me was like, hey, you know, Sean Payton talked Russell Wilson up a lot while he was in New Orleans, and thought that maybe the rapport between the two would have been better. But, you know, things on paper aren't always as good as they are. They're better. They look better on paper than they do in real life. And so I think to a degree there, I was a little bit surprised. But, you know, with the power Sean Payton has and the core that's around, like, that he has built around that team right now, doesn't surprise me at all that he wants to go in a different direction with a more precision-based quarterback.
Yeah, he wants a precision guy, a guy that can go through those reads, get to the next play, and all the, you know, pre-snap read, post-snap execution, extend the play when it has to be extended. Not, you don't extend the play when it doesn't have to be extended. No. So it doesn't shock me in the least that didn't last. And in the injury guarantee and the money situation, that certainly played a factor as well. And certainly feels like feels like they had been thinking about this way back in October. And the second they got eliminated from the postseason, boom, they do it. It's similar to what happened with Derek Carr last year in Las Vegas.
So speaking of, you mentioned Jarrett Stidham was going to take over for Russell Wilson this year. Do you remember who took over for Derek Carr last year?
Derek Carr brought it up today. They called him Stiddy. Jarrett Stidham.
So yeah, a lot of little happy accidents like that in the NFL.
It was it's the circle is tight in the NFL. You never know. I mean, the guy that cut you one day is the guy you could be replacing you the next. It's just it's a crazy cycle. But I think big picture wise, franchise quarterbacks are. They're what every franchise wants, obviously, but they're just not as easy to acquire as people think.
Right.
And you got to take swing after swing. There's different approaches for, you know, look, the most common way is to draft your guy in the first round, develop that guy, he becomes a superstar. Or you can do it this way, or you can make a big trade, or whatever the case may be. It's hard. And I don't know about you, but me, a New Orleans guy, Saints guy, grew up, I appreciate Drew Brees more and more as each season goes by. I appreciate just how much he elevated this franchise. And honestly, I'm sure there are people at other franchises thinking the same thing about, you know, their franchise that went out and did different things with their quarterbacks via this route. So yeah, it's an interesting scenario, but as the quarterback world turns in the NFL, it's funny what the finality of no playoffs will do to a franchise. All of a sudden, now these business decisions become very, very, very real.
Wonder if the Saints find themselves in a situation like that if they lose the next two games. So, but speaking of, today was Wednesday, first practice of the.
What would normally be our typical Wednesday practice. I don't know. I mean, the vibe was just kind of, it's not doom and gloom. It's more of, it is what it is. Mm-hmm. You know, we talked to Derek Carr today. He said we're playoff mentality and all that stuff. Everybody seemed to be in decent spirits. They had a few days off, holiday break. I don't know if you have the injury report there.
I do.
But,
I have it right here.
If you want to read that off, go ahead.
Absolutely. So Jordan Howden was dealing with a illness. It's a non-injury related illness. DNP today. Lonnie Johnson did not practice with a knee injury. Ryan Ramczyk still did not practice with a knee injury. Yeah. Isaiah Foskey was limited with a quad. Jimmy Graham, veteran rest day, limited. Cameron Jordan, ankle, limited. Eric McCoy, limited with a foot. Kendre Miller, limited with an ankle. Chris Olave, limited with an ankle. Peyton Turner, limited with a toe. Peyton Turner, still on injured reserve, can be brought back.
Yeah, and it's important to point out, DA said Tuesday that Michael Thomas and Marshawn Lattimore are not going to be back this week.
Yep.
And you'd have to, at this point, if there's no postseason, we'll see what happens if there's a regular season finale for either one of those guys. So we'll get more and more into that matchup in our next pod. But, yeah, man, I don't – there's a reality. It's you got to win. That's the only chance you have. You have to win. And I think they get the message, and this team could just as easily lay an egg as they could come out and play well after a few days off because, as we mentioned many times on this podcast, they've won 4 straight games following that Thursday night game. That mini-bye does them fit pretty well. So away we go. Another week in the NFL.
All right. For Sean Fazende, I'm Vasilios. It's been the Fox 8 Overtime Podcast. We'll catch you guys on Friday.